Story of a mad scientist's quest to recreate human life. Shelley's story was fiction, but how far from reality is Frankenstein? Hailed as a landmark in biological breakthroughs, Scottish scientists successfully cloned Dolly the sheep. The team at Edinburgh's Roslin Institute took a single cell from one sheep, effectively mated this with an unfertilised egg, and then implanted the embryo into a surrogate mother. The resulting lamb, called Dolly, was genetically identical to the sheep from which the original cell was taken. Dolly represents a huge advance in the battle against genetically inherited diseases. She also represents a huge ethical dilemma. The government, citing moral, legal and spiritual concerns, has reaffirmed its policy that human cloning is ethically unacceptable. But at the moment, there's no worldwide legislation in force to control the technological advances that some say are developing too fast. An American scientist yesterday announced his plans to open cloning clinics despite the ethical arguments. Is he cashing in on the profound desire of infertile couples to have children? And ethical problems aside, is cloning safe? Dolly was the 204th attempt at life. Her predecessors were all stillborn. And as she's less than a year old, little is known about the long-term effects of cloning.
Dr. Patrick Dixon is with me now, the author of The Genetic Revolution. Good morning. I suppose we should have thought this was going to be the next step after Dolly the sheep was cloned.
Well, indeed, and I predicted the Dolly story back in 1993. There's a certain inevitable progress about the speed at which genetics is transforming life. The fact is we now have the ability to alter the whole basis of human life on Earth.
And he says that if he can't do it in America, then he'll do it somewhere else, like Mexico.
Well, of course, this is porter-cabin technology. You can fit the kind of techniques required, as you saw on the video just now, into a microscopic environment. It's this tiny stuff. This is taking an individual cell from a human being, an egg from a human being, taking the genes out of the egg, putting the two cells together, putting a tiny electric current across the two of them, so they're two fused, they become one. And that egg then acquires all the genes from the adult and goes on to make a perfect clone. That happens in mammals, we know it happens in sheep, and we're very close, probably, to being able to do that in humans, unfortunately. And
that clone would be the twin of the person who had given the cells? That's
right, so you get very bizarre results. For instance, I have emails from all over the world from people who are asking me to be cloned. I don't know why, because I'm opposed to it, but one of them is a woman called Diane who would like to clone her father. She wants to have a father as a baby. Now, she won't recover her father, but she will have her father's twin as a baby if Dr. Seed has his way. Another one is someone who wrote to me just last night, a woman who has a severe medical problem, which means she will never have a child of her own. Rather than have a donated egg and sperm from someone else, she would like to have her own twin as a baby. Now, what are the effects emotionally on a child who grows up under those kind of circumstances?
Is there anything stopping him?
Well, not a lot. The technological barriers have been largely overcome. The Roslin Institute here in Britain that produced Dolly the sheep said 6 months ago that we were around 2 years away from being able to do it in humans, so that's 18 months from now. We have a situation in the USA where Clinton has refused to impose legislation stopping the research process. He's just said...
He's given it for 5 years, hasn't he, though?
No, what he said is that the clones may not be born for 5 years. So you can implant one in about 4 1/4 years' time, and he said it 6 or 7 months ago. So 3 3/4 years from now, he is saying, under as far as American law is concerned, that people could start implanting human clones with the prospect of them being born. But what he has not done, he refused to legislate against the techniques being developed. So he's said that commercial clinics can continue this research, and of course that has just created the ingredients for the headline this week of a somewhat strange-sounding scientist in America who says he's ready right now to set up a commercial cloning facility.
Is it actually possible that it could already have happened?
It is, yes, and the trouble with these things is you usually find out after the event. I'll give you 2 examples. In the 1980s, I met a British embryologist who had already duplicated a human embryo in secret. It's not quite the same as creating an adult. It was making, you know, two of a fetus, really, 2 or 3 of a fetus. And he'd done that quietly. It was 5 or 6 years before that became known, and in fact, it was me that made it known in 1993. Another example, I mean, I could give you a whole stack of them. I mean, Dolly, the sheep, was 7 months old when we heard that she'd been made. Well, she was made, of course, 7 months before that and then implanted in the womb.
A frightening prospect. Dr. Patrick Dixon, thank you very much for coming in this morning.
Thank you.
Well, a slight change of subject. Are we being forced